Hello, my name is Jay,
Hi, my name's Amber.
and our podcast is called The Power of Two.
So we set this podcast up because we're both fans of the original Charmed, but we're also fans of the reboot. And we decided that it would be fun to kind of set up a little podcast because we have these really in-depth conversations and we go on these rants and things. And I thought it'd be really interesting to just share that with you guys.
I think what's going to end up happening is we'll be praising the original and kind of crapping all over the reboot.
Yeah, exactly.
There
I
are
think so
some things
too.
about the reboot, though. There are some things I do like, but
Yeah, it's definitely not where it should be and how it should have been done. And I think that's pretty much down to how it's been developed from the get-go. I don't think that they've put enough thought and they haven't developed it properly.
right,
It's not what it should be.
I agree. Well, before we get more into that, let's introduce ourselves formally. So, my name is Jay. I'm 31 and I live in the US.
And my name's Amber. I am 28 years old and I live in England.
So, I discovered Charmed, I think I was 14 or 15.
I discovered Charmed when I was probably about 5 years old.
I know that when I started, Charmed was coming off its final season. So I think it was 2006, so I was 16.
Yeah, when I started Charmed, well, I don't really know exactly when I started Charmed, but the first vivid memory I have was of the Woogieman episode. And I remember because my cousins were around and I was watching it, and they were like, "Oh, you're watching that? That's scary." Another time I was about 5 or 6 years old. I think I was like six, 5, 6. I was very young.
I never watched it because I was probably too young to really appreciate it. But I remember when the show debuted and I caught glimpses of season one. And I think the first episode I actually ever saw was the Wendigo episode. And I remember specifically the scene where Piper checks her bandage and you see like the Wendigo fur underneath. So
Yeah.
I thought that was cool as a kid. I didn't keep up with it. And then I think a year later, I saw a bit of How to Make a Quilt Out of Americans, which is season two. I actually got really confused because I saw that the part where it was their aunt, forget her name, but she is with her two elderly friends. And
Aunt
then,
Gail.
yeah, Aunt Gail with her two friends. And I remember seeing that. And then the next scene, you see the Charmed ones. And I thought for the longest time that the Charmed ones were actually old women that made themselves younger with magic.
Oh
So
my
that was
God.
my impression of Charmed. I thought they were literally like old hags that were just making themselves beautiful. That was what I thought as a 10-year-old. I didn't know better, but I rediscovered it when I was in my teens and I really, really got into it.
I just remember watching it on Channel 5. It used to come on in the evenings, and then I guess they like reran it on the weekends in the afternoon. I think it was in the afternoon or in the morning. I think it was about 12 midday, something around that time. And that was season one. So I had been watching it pretty much from the first season, but I can't pinpoint exactly which episode. Just the vivid memory I have was the Wendigo. And one of the things that I always remember about Charmed was I was absolutely petrified of the opening credits because in season one, there's a clip where Phoebe has a premonition and she sees this demon turn around and look at her. And of course, that's Hecate in the show. But I didn't know that. I thought that was the Wendigo. But I was petrified of that. And when that would come on, I would like run out the room and hide behind the door so I didn't have to see the face. And then I would come back in the room and start watching.
Why do you think so many people love the show?
I think the reason that I love Charmed and I think that is so popular is it's not just a show about witches, it's a show about family. It's about strong women and their bond as women and them coming together. And I think that kind of the fighting evil aspect is also what drew me into it, definitely when I was younger. I always loved strong female role models. And in the 90s, which is when I grew up, there was a lot of that on TV. We had shows like Buffy, we had Xena, We had Scully and the X-Files, even though I didn't necessarily watch that back then.
Yeah.
I have watched it since. So we had a lot of strong women. Cleopatra 2525, I watched that as well. Not a lot of people remember that show, but I did and I loved it. But it was like strong women being the leads. They didn't need men to like protect them. They were the ones getting out there and saving the day. And that's what really drew me into it. And then, of course, the family aspect and the magic, of course.
Right. I think the show resonates a lot with gay men too because of the strong female roles. I know what drew me in is the way that it's written, especially the sisterhood between them. For me, the Charmed pilot, the something wicked,
Something wicked this way
yeah,
comes.
something wicked this way comes. I think it's textbook perfect genius pilot. It introduces everybody. You know exactly who everyone is. You know their roles and relations to each other. And I think on top of that, it was just perfectly casted. I know Alyssa Milano was not the original Phoebe, and I saw the
Yeah.
original pilot where they had Laurie Rom play Phoebe. I can see why they cast her, but ultimately I'm glad they got Alyssa Milano because she plays that flighty, younger, free-spirited sister so well. But I love the dynamic. I love Shannon Doherty as Prue. Even though I think Holly Marie Combs was the youngest of the three, I think she's the youngest. She played the middle sister so well. Like you can tell she was always caught in the middle, trying to like be the pacifist role, the mediator. And again, Phoebe was the younger, free-spirited hot mess. You know what I mean? What I liked about that was the way it was written, the way it was cast, and what kept me interested was the spells, the magic, the book. Huge fan of the book. And as it went on, they did a good job of doing storylines that kept me invested. I did like
Mhm.
some of the romantic stories. I did like in later seasons, they did the demons and the big bad. They really emulated Buffy, but they did it in their own way. It balanced dark and intense, but it also was very light and camp, especially with
Yeah.
season five. Season five was a fairy tale season. So they try to reinvent themselves every couple seasons. And I really, really enjoyed that. I didn't care for the last season, but I don't think anyone did. But yeah, that's why I love Charmed.
Like I said, I just pretty much agree with what you said, although, I didn't dislike the last season. I think season 6 is my least favorite season of Charms, simply because I didn't particularly like the magic school stuff.
Yeah, yeah.
I wasn't a fan of Gideon. I hear Holly Mary Combs was not a very big fan of Gideon either, because Brian Cruz dropped in it at a panel, which is funny. She kind of said it was because she was pregnant, but I guess because she did a lot of scenes while she was pregnant in magic school, because they had her in magic school all the time when she was like really pregnant. I guess,
Yeah.
yeah.
It was around season five, season six when they trying to reinvent themselves. And season five was very, very focused on fairy tales and mythological creatures. I mean, it was fine, but by season six, they started veering into like rip-off territory. Season six, they introduced, magic school, definitely Harry Potter. I think there's even an episode where they wanted to give a kid the name Potter or something, or was that in the
That
comic?
was season 5. That was when Piper had just had Wyatt and
Yeah.
Phoebe. Yeah, I think Phoebe suggested it.
Yeah, yeah.
Oh,
I mean, it's kind of always been that way, but Charmed was no stranger to taking what was popular at the time and doing their own spin on it. Even the show itself, the whole premise, heavily, heavily took from The Craft, even the theme song. The movie came out, network executives were like, oh, we need something like that. Constance Spurge comes along and she writes this amazing pilot, and then they rework it in a way that fits what they want because I do think that what she had in mind for the show ultimately didn't play out, but
mm,
she came with this great concept and it's exactly what was popular at the time. I think they did a really good job, but in later seasons, as most shows go, when they age, they start ripping things from other sources and then we get Magic School. Even season 3 was just blatantly copying the whole Buffy Angel thing with Cole and Phoebe. But it worked.
yeah,
But it worked though, because like I said, it was well acted, well cast. You can't deny that Cole wasn't popular. He was really well cast for the role. I mean, Julian McMahon was hot, is hot. I liked Cole. I liked Balthazar. I like what he brought in for season 3.
Yeah, I think season 3 was the best season of the original. So many things in it that I really liked. I like the fact that it was a lot darker than the other seasons. It was a lot more dramatic. We got to see a lot more of Prue. She kind of lightened up a bit, but on the flip side, she became pretty much like the fighter of the group.
Yeah, yep. That's what I loved what they did with Prue too. She was very stuffy in season 1. She was just constantly working, constantly playing mother. I mean, it worked because you get it. You get why she is that way. But then by season 3, I just think at that point, Shannon was like, stop writing me this way. I want to have fun. I want to fight. I want to do choreography. I want to date. I want to do that. Have Prue do that. And I think that's what happened because we got this whole other side of Prue where she's almost like Phoebe, but still the Prue that we recognize. She's still on top of her work. In fact, she left behind this legacy, even after the character left the show, that she was this super witch. So that's something that I really appreciate what they did with that character. The dynamic, how she changed and evolved in such a short time of 3 seasons. She had a great character arc, even though it was cut short.
Yeah, she did. She was a really good character. And I think, like I said, I think season 3 was the best season. I know some people prefer other seasons, but for me, I think season 3 was kind of like where the show sort of found its
Footing?
footing. Yeah, like it kind of found itself and it knew exactly what it was trying to be. And it had, they'd kind of mastered all the effects and things. They were happy with it. Yeah.
So let's talk about the reboot. I remember years ago, even before the current version that we have, I remember when CBS was coming out with the reboot, and I think they were going to do a recast. They were literally going to use the same characters, just recast it. And I think it got to the script stage, but it just did not get picked up. Do you remember that?
Yeah, I do. I think it was around 2000 and
14 or 15, right?
no, I think there was talk about it as early as like 2011, 2012. I
Oh,
I remember there being whispers that there could have been like a Charmed revival.
well, I know that Alyssa Milano tweeted something like, "Oh, it's too soon," something like that.
Yeah, I think they were planning to do a show and it was going to be about 4 sister witches
That came
that
later. That came later.
oh
So originally they were just going to reboot it, like a complete reboot, recasting, same characters on CBS. Then when that one didn't get picked up, the CW later, a few years later, um, decided to pick it up, but rework it. And like what you were saying, they were originally gonna have, I think, right, 4 characters that were not sisters, and it was supposed to be set in the 70s. I'm sure you know more about that than I do.
yeah, I think the 70s one is actually the one that kind of went on to become the reboot that we have now because the same kind of showrunners were a part of the process of making it, and
Yeah,
those are the Jane the Virgin creative team. So
go
they're
ahead.
the ones that pretty much started the idea, but I guess it was decided that that wasn't the right fit or whatever.
Yeah, yeah. I think it was actually supposed to come out in 2016 or 2017, but they took a year to rework it because people did not like the idea of having 4 characters not being sisters, being the charmed ones. And I don't think people cared for the 70s period setting. And I also think I'm trying to remember what else was the issue
I
with it.
think it was
Oh
like
yeah,
Tina, Paige, and Annie,
yeah,
wasn't it?
yeah, yeah. One of the characters was named Paige, and people thought that was weird because there was already an iconic character named Paige. So that's just a weird decision for them to make. And then I remember the CW released a statement saying that they want to go forward with it, but they're going to rework it. And then it took them almost a year or a year and a half to do it. Because then by the time early 2018 came out, in early 2018, that's when we start hearing about, oh, they're filming the pilot, here's the character names, here's the first character or the first actress cast. And it was like the characters was Macy, Mel, and I think the original was Maddie. What was the original name?
Yeah, I think it was Maddie or Madison.
Madison. Yeah,
Yeah,
something like that. Then they renamed her to Maggie. Yeah, so I remember following it at that stage. And then they filmed the pilot. I guess they refilmed part of it. And then it came out over the summer because they were showing it at conventions. And by the time most of us got to watch it on the CW that fall, there were some things that were different. I think they changed Tadius's demon form, and there were some lines that were, I think, cut or changed. But other than that, it was the same one because we have a friend in Canada who saw the original pilot at some convention.
I mean, I was actually at a convention. I think it was the month before the
Mhm.
actual pilot was going to air. So I actually was very against the idea of the reboot. I was pretty much off the topic, and then I was just pretty much just set against it. And I even asked, I went up on stage, well, not on stage, but I actually asked, Holly and the others, what was going on? Why isn't CBS doing like a continuation or whatever? If the original show is so successful, why can't they do that? And they pretty much told me that they don't know. Drew actually told us to vote with our eyes. If we don't like the show, don't watch. And then they won't obviously make any episodes. But that didn't necessarily work out. So
Yeah, I have some theories on why that's the case, which we can get into later. I remember you being anti-reboot for a while, and then you came around to it. So explain why you didn't like the idea of a reboot initially.
well, I thought it was a bad idea to reboot the show. I thought they were going to go down the route of it being like a continuation.
Right.
And I did not like the idea that they were actually going to start afresh, because I thought, well, how can you start afresh when you've got this whole entire legacy and this huge fan base that's gone on for however many years? And now they're saying that we don't need that anymore. We're going to start our own new version. And I was like, well, how is that going to work? But the idea of it seemed really bad to me. And I remember even up until like the promo pictures
Mm.
were released, I was like, oh my God, I was scrutinizing it. I was so against it. And then the trailer dropped, and it was nothing like I thought it was going to be. I don't know what I was thinking, but it kind of reminded me of like The Secret Circle meets Witches of East End, with a little bit of like Charmed thrown in. There's a moment in the trailer where the three of them come together and they link hands and they do their, Tedious vanquishing spell.
Timor to us fortitude.
I was like blown away. I was like, oh my God, because first of all, they weren't chanting in English, they were chanting in Latin,
Right.
so there were things about it that I really liked because it just seemed so different. On the flip side, I was a bit, okay, let's give this a go. But I've been very like flip-floppy about the whole thing,
Yeah,
really,
you were.
because as a fan of the original, I don't think you can replicate that. And I think
Lightning in a bottle.
even if you're going to try and replicate it, you should do the original show justice. They shouldn't have called it Charmed. They should have called it something else. They should have called it, Charmed the Vera Sisters, or Charmed A New Legacy, or something else, just to kind of give it a name like they did with Roswell.
Yeah.
Because I feel like with Roswell, they gave it its own name, its own identity. And even though they rebooted the characters, you could tell the two apart. And I know that they've had original characters go on the show and like direct and things like that. They
Mhm.
haven't done any of that with the Charmed reboot. Nothing. We're lucky if we get like a random shout out like, oh, by the way, they're on level P3. That's all we get.
Well, there are some very minor actors from the original that have been on the reboot, but I don't really think that was intentional on anyone's part. It's just actors getting work.
Mm.
I don't think I was ever anti-reboot. I was mostly skeptical, but the trailer made me excited. I like the music they used, the color scheme. It was very, very Witches of East End meets Secret Circle, like what you said. The way the trailer presented the show, I thought it was going to be a very certain type of atmosphere. I thought it was going to be like the Vampire Diaries, like very serial, very supernatural, like that's what I was expecting. And there was even a part in the trailer that referenced Melinda Warren. So I was really hoping for there to be some sort of connection to the original, even if it was a throwaway line or something that wasn't going to be like a big part of the show. I was really hoping that they throw in some sort of connection to make it part of the Hollowell universe. But unfortunately, that's not at all what had happened. In fact, they abandoned it. I remember when the show started airing, one of the writers tweeted that they were going to do a Melinda Warren type episode, I think for episode 9, 8 or 9.
Yeah, and Brad Silberling, I think his name was, he actually said that How Soon Is Now was actually going to be in the pilot episode, and that never
So
manifested.
yeah, so for whatever reason, there were definitely plans the showrunners and writers were tweeting and hinting and teasing about that never happened. There was an episode I remember one of the creators, I think Jenny Erman, forget her name, the one who did Jane the Virgin, who was
Yeah, Jenny Snyder Erman, I think her name
right.
is.
She was saying at one of the conventions promoting the show, saying that writing an episode about a demonic Fitbit. It gave me this expectation they were going to do these unique monster of the week type episodes. So I was like, oh, they're going to save innocence. It's going to be like the early seasons of the original Charmed. It's going to be like Supernatural. I was so happy. But then when they dropped that aspect of the show, I got really disappointed. And we can get more into that when we start revisiting season 1. Because right now we're recording this as season 3 has wrapped up. It's on hiatus. We just learned that season 4 is going to be shortened, have 13 episodes, and it's going to air in January of 2022. So it's a ways off. So up until then, we can recap some select, maybe all of them, but definitely select episodes of the reboot. I think we should definitely review some of the OG episodes of the original Charmed and then speculate what's going to happen in season 4. Already, I know that it was a big shocker when Madeline Mantock, who plays Macy, she left the show. That means they're going to have to, like in the original, they're going to have to replace the eldest sister with another sister. And we have no idea how they're going to do it. We have some ideas, but we just hope it's not another half sister because they already did that.
Yeah, no, that's been done to death. I think the writers have actually said that they're planning to do something different. I don't know if that means she's going to be a sister witch or if they're going to go down the route of making someone who's from another realm or something. I don't know, because we do know that they have that mirror dimension, which they set up I think it was the second episode. They set up that there was this world of mirrors and each mirror had a different world within it.
Well,
I think that was
even in the season 1 finale, or maybe not the finale, but the one before it, they introduced alternate universes. Like, what if Macy was the sister that stayed, or something like that?
Yeah, that was the season finale.
Yeah. So they introduced alternate realities. If they don't want to do the traditional secret half sister, I mean, they already did that with Macy. That's another thing that I didn't care for with the reboot in general, is that instead of having 3 characters who are sisters and have this long history, right away we're introduced to a random half sister who's alien to her family, and she's learning about her new 2 sisters, the rest of us. And that was missing from the original, because the original, like I said before, there was all this banter and sisterly moments that I really enjoyed, and that was completely missing in the reboot. But yeah, they did that with Macy being the half sister.
I mean,
So
it's still missing from the reboot. I mean, even up until the end of season 3, I mean, the chemistry is just not, you can tell it's manufactured. Put it that way.
Yeah, I mean, I will say too that I do think what the reboot is also missing is just good casting. Not to shade the actresses, but I I can make this whole thing a topic for its own episode. Maybe we should, but I'll just say quickly is that I don't think it was well cast at all. I think Madeline Mantock is probably the strongest lead actress, and now that they lost her,
Yeah.
they're gonna have to bring in someone just as strong or stronger to carry the show, because I don't know what they're doing with Sarah Jeffrey. I know that Sarah Jeffrey has a good career going outside of Charmed. You know, she was on Disney projects and she even worked with Jennifer Lopez. I think she has the acting chops, but she just has not shined that much on the reboot. I think they're trying to give her more material, but I'm just not feeling Maggie. And then with Mel, I don't know if it's the actress or the way that she's written, but she just does not fit in very well with the other two. Maybe it's a resemblance issue because they just, none of them look like sisters. None of them look like they could be related. I
No.
also have issues with the way they were cast for their racial backgrounds, and like I guess that's something I can get into more later. But that's, I think, one of the biggest problems with the show is just like lack of chemistry, choosing leads more for their background than their talent. No, no shade again. If they're listening to this, no shade. And I think the reason why the show went the direction it did is because the showrunners realized that and they started bringing in other characters to give all the meatier dialogue and scenes to, like Abby and Harry, the White Lighter. That was something that we noticed with season two, where a lot of more scenes went to Harry and Abby. But yeah, the half sister storyline was already done with season one. For them to do that again for season four just wouldn't make sense. That's why I speculate the new sister would probably be from another dimension or timeline. If not that, then they might just abandon the half sister storyline
Well,
completely and just do something else.
well, talk about doing something else. I heard a theory on Twitter that the new Charmed one could potentially be Mel's daughter from the future.
That could be true as well, because if they want to have that bloodline intact, so if they can't say they're sisters, they could say they're their blood family. That's a way to do it.
Because I mean, they did do that in the original Charmed. They, in the season finale, Piper used Patty and Penny, Grams, and the mum. They used the three of them to recreate the power of three to banish the hollow. So maybe they'll go down that route for the new sister.
In my opinion, on a show like this, as long as it's well written, they could pretty much do anything. They could come up with the most ridiculous thing, but as long as it's done right, no one's going to care because it's a supernatural show. It's a show where there's witches and demons and
I know, but like the thing about the reboot, and this is what I've always felt, is that the original Charmed, even though everything that happened in their world was so far-fetched, it was always grounded in reality. There was a consequence for the things that they did, and they always had issues with
yeah.
their magical life and their real life. With the new show, the girls seem to just streamline through everything. It's like, fine. No one's even addressed the fact that apparently there's suddenly a Victorian mansion that's apparently appeared in the middle of a bloody construction site, because that's what happened. The house has been uncloaked.
Oh,
You know,
oh wow.
they said that in the season 3 premiere, that the house is uncloaked now. And I even put that on Twitter. I'm like, hello,
Wow.
how have they uncloaked the house? Surely people are going to notice that. And even one of the writers in the writing room liked my tweet. I think that was Carrie or whatever her name is. I think that was her name. So she liked my tweet. And I'm just like, it doesn't make sense. It's so far fetched. At least, the Harry Wells, they had consequences for everything they did. They did something, they would get backlash, which is why they had personal gain, which they introduced in the second or the third episode of the reboot. But the writers have obviously forgotten that, because Maggie then went and did that spell in Safe Space to get her the job as a manager, which lasted all of like 2 episodes or whatever,
Right.
like most stuff that goes on in the show, because the writers can't keep a consistent plot going, or
Right.
they drop stuff. It's just ridiculous. Season 3 started out with them going about their lives and stuff, and I thought, oh, this is good. Mel's getting back into teaching and she's going out and doing all this stuff, and I'm like, well, what happened to that? Eventually that disappeared. Now it's all about her being pregnant all the time.
No, the show is very inconsistent. That's the main issue I had, even as far back as season one. I thought season one, for all its problems, it seemed to have a focused storyline. And I know that it did go off the rails as well. And then season one ended, the showrunner got fired and got replaced with 2 showrunners, did it together.
The evil twins, apparently they're referred to on Twitter. People call them
Right.
the evil twins.
I think they messed up the show. I mean, they made a lot of creative decisions with the show that just ruined it. I do think season 2 and 3 had better writing in terms of dialogue, but the actual ideas were very not so great. I'm hoping the new showrunners get away from these plot points as much as possible. I absolutely hated Safe Space. But for me, the first 4 or 5 episodes of the reboot I actually did like. I actually
Mm.
was looking forward to every episode at that point. It was around 7 or 8 that I got disinterested. I still followed it, but I didn't like what they were doing with it. And then by season 2, I stopped watching it as it aired. I decided to just watch it, the whole thing, when the season was over. That may change to
Yeah.
season 4, but I could not keep up with it. It lost me as a viewer.
I was very much with it the whole first season. So I watched the whole first season, and a lot of it I watched live. When season 2 came around, I was like, okay, this is different. The first episode intrigued me because they destroyed the book.
I think that was the defining moment that lost me as a viewer when they destroyed the Book of Shadows. I thought that's them saying F you to the original fans. Because I do think a lot of the people who are watching season 1 were only watching to see what was in that book. That the
Yeah.
art in that book, the spells, like all of that element of season 1 was very reminiscent of the original charm. Consulting the book, opening up the pages, finding the right spell to vanquish whatever monster of the week type thing. I think a lot of fans enjoyed that. And then when they removed that for season 2 and going forward, I mean, I think a lot of fans felt betrayed.
Brad Kern said in the DVD extras for the original show, he said that the house is really the room for the girls, and the Book of Shadows is the heart and soul. And when they took that, even though the reboot didn't use as much, that was still part of the legacy. And the fact that they took it away, it was like they took away that bit that kept the show charmed. And not only that, but I remember, I think it was episode 2 or episode 3, they had a whole episode and they weren't even in the house at all. And I was like, what the hell? They were all in safe space in the command center. I'm like, the fuck is this? Sorry, excuse my French, but I was like, what?
It didn't even help too. Like if they wanted to get away from the book and looking up the answers for like a specific storyline purpose, again, if it was well written, I could get behind it. But what they ended up doing is that they just replaced one book for another. We lost the Book of Shadows in season 2, but then they go and introduce something called the Book of Elders, which is essentially the same damn thing, only they wrote it intentionally in this elder gibberish language that we are not going to be able to read or understand. The books function exactly the same, and that's what pissed me off. It's like, why couldn't they just keep the Book of Shadows? Why did they have to get rid of it and introduce this other book?
And then they have that, ridiculous idea that, or plot point, that they need to use that magnifying glass to read what's in it. Well, what's the point of that?
Honestly, I think they were trying to go for this, like, I don't know if it was on the Magicians or the Librarians or something, but there was a show I think had something similar. Because if you think about it, the command center kind of felt like this laboratory almost. It's very sci-fi. The whole season 2 and 3 is very sci-fi. Something that I guess I kind of appreciated that change, but they overdid it and they made it so that it wasn't even charmed anymore. Regardless, they went for this more sci-fi research command
technology.
Yeah. So I think having the magnifying glass, I think they wanted to make them look more like, I don't know, like researchers or that librarian type thing where they're decoding things. Like they wanted it to have that atmosphere versus a magical book. But either way, we got what we got. They ended up even bringing back the Book of Shadows, except it it looks like crap.
I know.
They heard us. They heard everyone. They acknowledged that people did not like that they got rid of the book, and they brought back a recreated version of it.
Oh my god.
It was so stupid. Like they could not even decide how to introduce it properly, because the first episode, we see the recreated book, and Mel says she made it, and she's showing her cousin Josefina. And then in the next episode, they have Josefina showing the sisters as if she made it. And
And Mel's reaction.
and Mel's reacting like, oh my God, it's so stupid.
I wonder if like Melanie Diaz was like, we just filmed this episode the week before. Why are we just done the scene before, why are we doing it again? I wonder if she even said something.
I honestly think they don't care. The vibe that I'm getting from all the actresses by season 2, I think they checked out. I think they're just showing up for the paycheck. Because the first season, you can tell the actresses had some spark, this excitement being on the show. And it showed on their social medias. You can see that there was a certain edge to the way that they were acting. Now, it's almost like they're just phoning it in. I think that's what they're doing. I think they're phoning it in. She probably acknowledged that she filmed 2 contradictory scenes, but I don't think she gave a crap.
Well, I think Madeline Mantock is probably the one that didn't check out, because looking at her tweets and the things that she was saying, she's been very vocal about not liking parts of the show and not agreeing with certain decisions that were made. And I think that's part of the reason that she left the show.
Mm-hmm.
You know?
Generally, actors don't have a say in how the story goes or how production goes. So it's very possible that the reason why Madeline left is she probably did have legitimate issues with the storyline. Because as we saw, they gave a lot of story and screen time to Harry and Abby. I'm sure she had issues and she raised concerns because she said she spoke with the producers back in January, and that's a little later she decided to leave. It's very possible that the other 2 were witness to all this and they realized that no one's going to care what they think or say. I don't really get the vibe from them that they particularly enjoy what they're doing anymore. I think they're just showing up for the paycheck. So
and I know that at the end of the day, you know, they are just actors and they're only doing their jobs. And I think the show could be better. It could be so much better. And that's part of my problem, is just the fact that
it has so much potential.
Exactly. It really does. And they've squandered it because they haven't invested in the show properly, in the writing, in the production, in the general direction. They should have, like it or not, they should have consulted the original writers in some perspective and even had at least one of them on the team to like help, even if they wanted to do like something different. And then there's the racial aspect of the actresses as well, and them not kind of living up to like the casting and things. They could have done that so much better as well.
I think I'm definitely, because I'm Latino, and knowing that they were cast as Latina characters, it actually meant a lot to me to see that representation. And for the way that things went, the way that things did go for the rest of the show, it left me really disappointed. And I want to get into that when we review the pilot.
Okay.
Yeah. So I think we'll be wrapping up now, but what we'll be doing next is we will watch and recap the reboot. And I think in the future, we'll probably, I don't know, do you want to do every episode or do you just want to play it by ear?
Yeah, we'll just see how things go.
Okay. Well, we'll wrap up here. If there's any feedback or comments you guys have, then just leave it in the comments or email us and we will go over them on our next episode.
Yeah. So thanks for listening.
Thank you so much for listening. I had a lot of fun doing this. Bye.
Bye.